Welcome to this week's webinar from Quantum Health. We're looking today at the NES miHealth with the use of the external electrodes, namely the carbon pads. Here we have a set of carbon pads. They're made up of two parts. You have the grey and black pads and the lead itself. The leads are standard 2mm posts that press into the raised section of the pad, and then we have the 3.5mm phono connector that goes directly into the miHealth. The pads themselves are made up of grey outer shell, which is an isolator, which means the electrical current doesn't go through that, and if you put your hands on those sides, the grey sides, you won't feel any energy. The black inner is the conductive area, and this is why they're called carbon pads, because that's a rubber that's impregnated with conductive carbon. So it's made up of a composite. So when these are used on the body, you'd place the black area directly on the skin, and you're able to press down on the outer grey and you wouldn't feel the energy. Now, the miHealth device has a number of ports, and today we're going to be looking at the external electrode accessory port. This should be easy to find directly to the side of the external, or should I say internal, electrodes. The terminology we're using is that if it's attached to the device, as these silver electrodes are, then they're seen to be internal electrodes. When we talk about external electrodes, we're talking about accessories that we would plug into the device and would come separate to the miHealth. So here we have a yellow arrow pointing to that black port. That's where that 3.5mm phono connector would go in. That's our connector to the carbon pads in this case. Please do not plug the pads into any other areas of the device. Now, once you've plugged it in, you need to calibrate it. This involves going to the settings screen. Now, the settings screen is found by pressing the wrench icon that's found on the bottom right hand side of your miHealth screen. So once you've pressed with your finger or a stylus the icon with the wrench, you'll come through to this settings page, and here we have calibrate electrodes. I've put a yellow ring round it so you can see it on the screen. Now it's a touch screen, so you would literally touch within that yellow area and you would be able to open up the calibrate software. It's important to do this regularly with your device, whether you're going to be using external or internal electrodes, because it keeps the device operating at the most efficient level. Here we have a video of the calibrating, and as you can see on the screen it says external electrodes, so the device has recognized that we have a lead plugged into the device. It's asked us to not touch anything, and that means the electrodes on the device, all the carbon pads, and then it created its own calibration, and now it's complete. As simple as that. So now your carbon pads should be plugged into your device and they're calibrated. Now there's many different ways of using the carbon pads, and we've put together a small number of suggestions here. These are things that we've used in clinic and work and are highly effective. So but feel free to explore yourself, finding as many different ways as you can to use the device with the carbon pads. The great thing about the carbon pads is they're not sticky. Unlike common electrode pads that you might use with a TENS machine, these do not have a gel surface, which is a benefit from the point of view of contamination of materials and things of this nature. It does, however, mean that they don't stick to the body, which means you have to apply pressure to hold them on. The benefit here is they're flexible and very easy to clean. So in this case we can stand on them quite literally, and here you'll see a direction of being able to provide energy front and back on the foot, and reminding the foot of its normal arch, and revitalizing those energies that go through the foot. Now, a reminder is when you are cleaning the carbon pads, please do not use alcohol. Being a rubber composite, the rubber will dissolve if you put alcohol on them. So soapy water, mild detergents, things of this nature are perfectly fine. Here's another type of treatment with the carbon pads. In this case, you can see that we've straddled a joint from the heel across to the front of the foot, and this is a fantastic way of stimulating repair and freeing up joints. It's also useful for dealing with inflammation, if an ankle's swollen, things of this nature. So you're able to literally fold the carbon pad, as you can see on the right, around over the area of interest, and then you're able to run the signals straight through there. Now, we've suggested ankle joint, which is ER28. That's purely from the ER menu, but obviously if you're using the scan, you'll be able to recognize maybe the most suitable information patterns to put in through the ankle, as well as intuitive ones such as muscle, tendon, joint, bone, biocell, matrix carrier, all sorts of things. For example, if someone's fallen over and they've hurt their ankle, there may be stress and emotional events going on at the same time. So you might choose to put ESR in as part of a cycle of treatment onto it. So there's a whole variety of ways of applying it. So here we've got a nice way to use the device straight away on an ankle. Here's a common injury. Joints in the shoulders, for example, is somewhere we often see problems, and in this case from the ER range it might be ER39, the shoulder joint. Here is a technique we refer to as swamping. This is something that we refer to with joints in particular, where we're able to place a carbon pad either side of the joint and then bring up the energy, increasing it to a strong comfort level. The patient becomes aware of the energy not just on the surface, but there's a sense of it traveling through the joint, around the joint, and being sensed in that joint. So that swamping sensation can be actually very distinct, but the client often feels that it's the best direction to move in for their recovery. They feel the energy and they encourage you to bring it up to a distinct energy level. Please be aware not to override common sense as to where that comfort level is for that client. So you have to communicate with your client over this. But if you imagine putting a carbon pad front and back of a shoulder and then allowing the energy to really get into that area. Here's another way. It's often common to have forearm strain or wrist strain, carpal tunnel, things of this nature. We're able to place carbon pads maybe on the forearm and the wrist joint, and then have the energy travel backwards and forwards from that area. This has been highly effective in waiters and waitresses that we've treated on training sessions, where very rapidly long-term conditions that are preventing them for carrying plates and normal restaurant-style work, they've dramatically seen changes with a very simple treatment in this area. Here's a reminder of the muscle layouts of the arms, and you can see we've got a whole variety of muscles that we can work with. Now, it would be common to put a carbon pad maybe at one joint and at the next and have the energy run backwards and forwards. Here again, we might go this way, we might go this way, we might go across. All of this would be supporting recovery in those areas, and it's important not to just treat one area. If someone's got a wrist problem or an elbow problem or a shoulder problem, they're normally all interrelated. So don't just focus on the wrist if that's their point of complaint, and remember that you can treat the opposite arm as well. You can use the reflexes in the body, and in fact the wrists often respond well to the ankles. So if you're not getting a response in the direct treatment of a wrist, make sure you treat the elbow, make sure you treat the upper arm, the shoulder, treat the opposite arm, and if necessary try and treat the ankles as well. See how that helps the body respond. Here's another way. Here we're using the carbon pads as pairs, and we've got 4 pairs that we're going to look at here, and we're there to look at some spinal points with hormonal projections. So the first one is A, what we've put up here, which is C7 on the top of the spine, and SSN, which is the suprasternal notch, which is the opposite. It's out through the front of the throat area. So it's the hollow in the front of the throat, in the top of the chest. Then we've got the sacrum and the reproductive organs being linked up at the base of the spine. Now we're able to provide the carbon pads at both ends of the spine and then choose settings from the scan and the ER range, and we'll be looking at those ERs in just a moment. So this is a very nice treatment. You can lie down and place the pads either end of the body, but remember you have to be able to place some pressure on them to make sure there's a good solid contact. If you fail to get a good solid contact, you often get maybe a spiky sharp feeling where it's only just making contact. So make sure it's a good solid contact. Sometimes it's more convenient to even lie the patient on their back if that'll allow you to get that solid contact. Again, only ever use the device at the comfortable level for the client. Now, second area here is at the base of the scapula, which has a reflection through to the breast. It also has a fantastic response in the uterus via the nipples. You literally feel the uterus pull up internally if it's out of position. So that's a very useful reflex to use with women. We have the kidney and adrenal area down at the base of the ribs. We also are able to see the liver and pancreas responding in that area, and all of these have a significant impact on hormonal regulation. The next area down is just out at about 45 degrees from the sacrum, and this is a reflex area for the reproductive organs, and if you're treating that area it'll become very obvious. It warms up and you'll feel or see an asymmetry on the skin, very much looking like a strawberry on the top of the buttock. Now all of these are going to help balance the hormonal processes. Here we have some examples of the ERs related to this area. So A, which was the top of the spine and the bottom of the spine down at the sacrum, we've got the ER 11, 18, 50 and 51. Here we have area that we've referred to as B, which was at the scapula and the breast, and we're able to use the 16, the lungs ER 6, the thoracic ER 19 and the heart ER 37, and these are suggestions based on location. We have the kidneys, the adrenals, the liver, the pancreas, and again we have each of the ERs related to this area. And you might spend maybe 2 minutes on each of these. Here we have the last position, the reproductive organs, and again the ERs. But you could also apply, for example, the cycles male and female from your device, and you can support all of this treatment obviously with infoceuticals that you might take at the time to support this process. Now the miHealth touch screen technology with a healing touch. Here let's have a look at what else we can do with the miHealth, and this opens up an exciting area that's really been taken on by practitioners around the world. When we touch another person, we exchange energy. there's no way to avoid the fact that a kind of energy communion takes place, even in such seemingly innocuous acts as shaking hands or touching another on the shoulder. We're communicating, aren't we? Now, energy exchanges of that nature, a touch itself communicates a great deal energetically, and actually influences our own energy, our emotions, our organs, and our chemistry. Now, it doesn't matter whether we're in the presence of a lover, a friend, a relative, a healer. All those energies can have a strong effect on us, and the coherence of our heart can be entrained to theirs if it's suitable. But we also find that we can become agitated or angry or upset, distressed, if the incoherence occurs where we're being trained to someone's, let's say, unhealthy energies. So as practitioners, we must be very careful and very aware of our energy and what energies are going on with our clients. This way we're able to make sure that we do not get to a point where we hinder our client. This means we have to be conscious of these factors and how they're affecting therapy. Massage is a beautiful way to assist in healing, and we see the great response not just through the palpation of tissue, but in the accepting of treatment and the hands-on contact, the sense of being cared for and accepting care. Now with the miHealth, we can now apply our hands and get these wonderful responses using technology. Here's 6 reasons why touch is important for our health. It helps us feel connected to others. We're social animals, social beings. We definitely need touch. It reduces anxiety. It helps bonding. It lowers the blood pressure. It's very observed. It improves our emotional outlook. We feel positive for the future, and it gives us a sense, or gives us a sensory input that we tend to crave. We want touch. It's positive to us. Touch accelerates healing in all forms. Here's a wonderful image of a massaging foot. Now we're able to use the device both directly onto the skin and through our own hands. Let's first have a look at the makeup of the skin and what's actually happening from an energy point of view. We see asymmetries. These areas that come up that the skin highlights to us, they're areas where we hear a difference in energy as we draw the device across the skin. You've all heard that, where you draw the device down an arm or across the back and there is a sound that comes and goes. It's identifying the difference, an area of difference. And this is an area that has different electrical properties, hence we call it an asymmetry. Now we hear it, we see it when it goes pink, or the colour changes. It doesn't necessarily have to go pink, it's the fact that it changes colour. If the whole area was pink and one area went white, for example, that would be the asymmetry, the area of difference. If the whole area was noisy and one area was silent, that would be the asymmetry. So it can be either an increase in interest or a lack of interest in that area. That is the asymmetry. It also has a sensation. The client will feel more energy in that area, or it may be completely numb in that area. Again, it's the oddity, the difference in that area. What we generally find is that the current runs there, there's a lower electrical resistance, and energy travels faster in that area, is more noticeable. So a surface asymmetry tends to be visible, or you can find it sticks, the device might stick in that area. As soon as you start applying energy to it through the device, it becomes possible to sense that the resistance pathway is lower and energy runs to that area. It's traveling into the body, it's being accepted by the body's looking for that stimulus, and that can be very useful for therapy. If we place our hands onto our client and we have maybe a carbon pad on the back of our client and we have a carbon pad attached to us, then we become an extension of the miHealth. Our sensitivity allows us to feel the energy, and it allows us to recognize where those asymmetries are. Asymmetries that are even subtler than the ones we might pick up normally through the device itself. You may feel it on your fingertips. You may drag a finger across an area and suddenly you'll notice that one area has energy rushing to it that you couldn't feel elsewhere. You have become the electrode, and you are able to identify and direct energy into these areas. The energy is traveling through you and you're able to direct it. Imagine running a hand across the back, sensing the energy and then sensing an asymmetry. That is the key way, the pathway in to change for the body. And now you could literally draw your fingers across that area, left and right, up and down, and draw energy to that point, almost rubbing out the asymmetry with your fingertips. With this form of use of the carbon pads, you're able to direct the energy and really bring a more personal touch to the therapy. Drawing it across the head, for example, is not only a sense of caring, but also looking at all the dermatones that go back into the brain, back into the spine, to the organs. And those of you who have taken part in level 2 training, you'll recognize this chart as part of the level 2 training, and I wholly recommend those of you who haven't taken part to take part in the level 2 trainings. Here we look at dermatones, we look at areas of the skin where we can activate, and we particularly relate them to the terrains and stars. Here's an example of our map of the body, looking at each of the spinal areas and the interrelated strips of skin. So asymmetries occurring in any of these areas, you can look at them and relate them straight back to the spinal pathways. Here's a chart that looks at that area, and again, this is all part of level 2. So it's definitely worth considering taking part in the level 2 trainings. Here is examples of different symptoms that often occur and the typical organs involved, and then the nerve roots. This is the NES energetic terrains activation zones, and a lot of them overlap. So NES have used a compressed view of each of the spinal areas in the most effective points that we've found in clinic to activate response. So if we were trying to activate, for example, the lung areas, we might be using ET5, and we'd focus the treatment between T1 and T4. That's how we'd use that in clinic, for example. Now, let's have some fun. These ladies look like they're having fun, don't they? Lots of energy. Well, this is what could be happening. They could have a carbon pad on each other and energy could be going backwards and forwards. So through their hands they could feel the energy. We had a lot of fun at the retreats using this, and practitioners around the world are really taking it on to treat each other. Here's an example of how you might enjoy it. Imagine all the energy rushing in. Here's another example. Share the experience. Now, if we break the circle and we put a carbon pad in each of the hands of these people, so we've got 2 carbon pads, and the energy will travel from one person to the next and back again. We encourage you to experiment with this and to enjoy what you can get out of using carbon pads. Today we've given you a few examples of how you might bridge a joint, swamping an area maybe, bridging muscles, going from one muscle to the next, from connections in joints. We're looking at using it through the fingertips by placing a carbon pad on the therapist and a carbon pad on the client, and using our own fingertips to isolate asymmetries, really target those areas, and use it in an investigative way and in a therapeutic way, recognizing the asymmetry and being able to draw the energy to those points. There's the energy going around the room. Now, here we go for questions and answers, and we look forward to hearing how you get on, and please put things on the forum regarding suggestions and ideas how to use this. So let's go forward with the Q&A.